DevelopSec, Developing Security Awareness with James Jardine, brought to you by Jardine Software. Hi, and welcome to episode 21 of the DevelopSec podcast. I am your host, James Jardine, and today I want to talk a little bit about some of the data protection requirements / breach notification requirements that are out there. A lot of different things coming down the pipe. There's been stuff coming down from the government talking about doing a national standard data breach notification scenario where, it's set timelines, but everybody's going to have to follow it. Right now, we have different settings depending on the different states that you're in, right? And most states have some sort of breach notification. They have some sort of definition of what is sensitive data, personal data. But as a developer, as QA, as the business side of things, going in and developing applications, how much are you aware of the different requirements that are out there or what you might fall under? And again, right now, it's different per state depending on what they actually consider sensitive information. Now, normally we think this is going to be a CIO, a CISO, privacy officer, type of role that has to deal with this. Whether you're under HIPAA, whether you're under PCI, doesn't matter what you're doing. Usually you're not thinking about it as much at the development level of what are the legal requirements that I'm bound to based on the type of data that I store and based on the type of business that I perform. And so we oftentimes rely on this third party, if you will, since it's not really part of your development process, to keep track of this stuff. And maybe we have procedures that are in place within our company that tell us that this type of data has to be protected and the protection has to be at this level. But do you know where that data is? Are you following those guidelines? If you don't have guidelines, but then I encourage you, to push within your organization to start building up these guidelines. Understand what you fall under. If you fall under HIPAA, what are your requirements for dealing with and properly storing sensitive information, which may be first name and last name in combination with some medical history? There's all kinds of different combinations we come up with depending on the type of data that you're storing, the type of business that you do. But we have to start thinking about this because oftentimes, I came from a developer background, so I understand, right? Hey, we get a requirement. Hey, here's the software we want to build. Great, let's start. And we all know, at least hopefully all of us know, that we need to protect passwords. Okay, that's probably the most known thing. Hey, we got to protect passwords. We got to, hash these things. We got to salt them. We got to do all this different stuff to them. But I think less people feel the need to do protection for just like Social Security number. And that's a big one, right? We use that all over the place. Yet, I don't know as though it's being encrypted or properly protected every place that it's being used. And oftentimes we think, well, it's in our internal database. Nobody can get to it. But as we've seen with all the breaches that have happened over the past few years, that's not necessarily the case, right? We have to start protecting this data. And our first step to protecting it is understanding what data is sensitive in our situation. And what kind of brought this about was I caught an article, and I'll post an article in the show notes about this, but in New Jersey, they just passed some new bill defining what is sensitive information for healthcare. And what it is, and it's not just healthcare, right? But this is really for more of the healthcare providers, the healthcare companies. And I'll explain why that really is in a minute. But what they're saying is you've got any combination of first name or first initial and last name linked with one or more of the following. It could be a social security number, a driver's license or state ID card number, the person's address, or identifiable health information, right? So that could be procedures performed, diagnosis, anything like that with your name is something that needs to be protected. And what they're saying is the data must be encrypted or rendered unreadable, undecipherable, or otherwise unusable by unauthorized person. And they're also saying, hey, look, you just can't throw a password in front of this thing. We really want you to be taking care of the data. Now, the reason I said this is really more towards their healthcare type industries, and one, the bill says that, but two, well, let's think about the information we just talked about, right? First name, last name, and address. Okay, well, that's in the phone book. Wait, do we have phone books anymore? Maybe we don't have phone books anymore, but whitepages.com, tons of pages out here have that type of information, right? But that's because we've already made that publicly available, right? We all understand that that information is publicly available. But if we tie that now to the fact that you're a health organization, well, now I'm getting more information about you. Just being in the phone book, just having your name and address isn't that big a deal. But if I'm going to tie you to United Healthcare, well, maybe that's something I can use in an attacker to build up a further attack, to start my process of social engineering, to start the process of identity theft, and all these different things that we can now do, because now we can associate you with a specific company, with a specific organization. So when these things come out, they don't just fall under oh, well, wait a minute. It's in the phone book. That it has to be encrypted. You can't share that. They sort of think this through a little bit more. But so if you're in the state of New Jersey and you're developing applications and you're storing data in New Jersey, you might want to know this of what do they consider secured or sensitive data that you need to protect. Because I go back to when we're doing design requirements, a lot of people don't understand what it is that have to be protected. We're very good at understanding this is what we need in our application. Hey, I need these fields, I need these forms to do this functionality. And we do a great job building that. Unfortunately, a lot of times we overlook that whole privacy side in some of these legal requirements because, again, I think a lot of people leave that out to, hey, we've got a privacy officer or somebody that is supposed to know all this. That comes down procedures, but are you following the procedures that are there? Another example of this is Florida. Last year, Florida passed their Florida Information Protection Act of 2014, and I'll include a link out to that document as well, where they talk about here are the things that we consider sensitive, and that is first name or initial and last name. All right, it's the same as New Jersey, right? It's always going to have that name identifier. And one or more of the following: your social security number, your driver's license, passport, military ID, or other government document used to verify identity, any financial account number or credit or debit card number in combination with your security code, access code, or password, any medical history, mental or physical condition, medical treatment or diagnosis by healthcare professional, and then your health insurance policy number or subscriber ID, and any unique identifier used by health insurer to identify the individual. Now, also what they consider protected is username or email address in combination with a password or security question and answer that would permit access to your online account. And again, I think most times what we're doing is we're already doing that portion, right? Most sites, especially enterprise level sites, should be properly protecting password. Rarely are we seeing username and email address, right? Because we don't see that as sensitive. But again, it's username or email address in combination with. So if you're doing the password, right, then no longer is it in combination with, because we're protecting one of those pieces. I think what often gets overlooked is that security question and the answer, because again, those actually are pathways to access to the site. How many times have you seen where you have these secret questions and the secret answers aren't protected just like the password is? Right? These should be protected the same exact way because they're just as sensitive. Because if I get your secret questions, depending on how your reset works, there's a chance I could get into your account that way by going through and getting these secret questions, secret answers. So we want to make sure that we're protecting those as well. Now, this doesn't include, right, what we're talking about having to be sensitive. Well, we're not including data that's encrypted, secured, or modified to be rendered unusable. So again, when I go back to the username password, well, yeah, your site has a username and password, but you're protecting that password, right? So now we're not including that right now because we're protecting one of that, so we don't have the full combination. I do find it interesting, and I don't think it's the way to go, but that first section of the Florida piece where it's first name and blah, 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 blah. Well, it seems like you just push people just to encrypt the first and last name, and then we can leave everything public. I wouldn't do that. I don't recommend that. I think you get in a lot of trouble for doing that. It's interesting to me the way that it's written, that looking at it from a different viewpoint, it's like, well, wait a minute. Why, if I've got all this information, why encrypt everything? Why not just encrypt the one thing? And now I don't have the first thing I need for the combination. But I definitely recommend the other route of, look, encrypt social security numbers, encrypt your financial account numbers, any of this data that you consider sensitive, make sure you're protecting it, right? Encrypt it. It's not that expensive anymore to do this encryption if you're doing it right. So let's take the time to do it. But I think the key part there is that we have to understand what are our rules, right? I'm developing an application. What are my rules for doing this? I know how to do functionality. I know how to build the application. But I need to make sure that I'm falling in line with some of the laws that are out there, because these lead directly into breach notification, right? So, hey, how do I know if I need to notify? I've been breached. Well, let me go look and see. Okay, well, let's see. I have first name, I have last name, but I'm encrypting social security number, driver's license, all this other information I'm encrypting. And all they got was first name, last name, and a bunch of encrypted data. Well, does that mean I have to fall within the 30-day breach notification? What is my breach notification timeline? This is all stuff that we have to understand. And while as developers, we're not dealing with notifications, we're really probably not even dealing a whole lot with the breach, right? We have security personnel, we have other teams that really handle that, and we just get handed the fixes of, hey, this was broken, go fix it. Maybe I need some data pulled. So we're not dealing with that, but we have to understand that to help protect the app. And we're that last line of defense, sort of, hey, look, we're designing applications. Okay, you got the business team that's going in, they're doing this design. Hey, this is what we need. We need this application to do this. It's going to store this data, this data, this data. Okay, and if they haven't indicated what's going to be protected here, where, there, and everywhere, well, then when it gets down to the developers and we start talking about design docs, we start doing all this stuff, well, then it's your job to sit there and say, hey, wait a minute. According to state law, that field, and that field has to be encrypted, right? Or, if we got to encrypt this, or we're going to fall out of the bounds of where we need to be. This is going to put us at a bigger risk. And maybe it was an oversight. Maybe people just didn't understand that. And now that you've brought that to light, you're actually helping educate the business as a whole to make sure that, hey, guys, I saw this out there. We need to fall in line with this. We fall under this. We're a health company. We're a e-commerce company, and we're collecting credit cards. So we have things that we need to follow in the event that something happens. See somebody come in and audit you for these things, to say, hey, are you doing this? If you're doing PCI, you might have an auditor come in and they may look at it and say, hey, wait a minute, you're not doing this. You're not encrypting your passwords. You're not storing this properly. But before we get to that stage, let's actually look at it and say, hey, we know what we're supposed to be doing. We know where we do business. We know who our customers are. Because remember, if you have customers outside of your area, you may have to follow their notification laws as well. Hey, we've got one user from New Hampshire, and New Hampshire law requires that if one person's breached, we need to be notified. Okay, so maybe there's a rule for that. I don't have all the answers for what are all the breach notification laws, what are all the data privacy laws, what's considered sensitive information in every different state and every different region. You can go out, you can search it. I would recommend searching for your area first, so where you're doing business. But then expand that out, build out some tables, understand what is considered sensitive information where. I know when we come in and do penetration tests, I look at it of, hey, where are we? And what type of information are we finding? And I've come across stuff where I've said, wow, you've got this information here. It's not really properly protected. And fortunately, you're not in the state of Florida, because Florida would consider that sensitive information. You need to protect that. You're in a different state. Or maybe you are in the state of Florida. Hey, did you hear about the Florida Information Protection Act of 2014? This stuff is considered sensitive information, and you're not protecting that properly. We recommend that you're protecting this, right? I'd much rather find out as a developer, as I'm developing, that I need to go in and protect certain data so I can build it properly and architect it correctly. But sometimes we find out afterwards. So I encourage developers, QA, although it is difficult sometimes for QA to be able to see into the database to see what's there. Although, I mean, I'm a fan of QA being able to see what actually gets stored in the database. If you're going to test the app, let's test it. Don't just test the user interface. But let's go out, get with your business partners, get with the people that are, managing these projects, and start talking about, hey, what data are we storing? Record that data off. Hey, I need a list of, this is the fields that we're storing that we consider them sensitive, and here's how we're going to protect them. And here's the reason why we're protecting them. One, top reason should be just we want to protect our customer information. Two, we have a legal requirement to protect this information. And if for some reason it gets breached, and we're seeing a lot of people get breached lately, now we're going to have requirements to notify, all this stuff that cascades down. So we want to protect ourselves, and it's not that difficult when we do it up front. It's just a matter of understanding those laws. And unfortunately, they are different across all states. They're changing all the time. We're seeing new ones added. And if the federal government, pushes theirs through, then we may see a national standard, which kind of good news from that point, because it'll make it a standard. At least I know what is sensitive data in this environment. I know I need to protect this. Not what is it in Florida, what is it in New Jersey, what is it in Texas. This is what it is. This is the data I need to protect. Let me protect it. If I get breached, this is the notification period I have. And we follow those rules. But I think oftentimes as developers, as QA, as business analysts, project managers, all of us out there not in the security field, we overlook a lot of this information that, while not directly related to our coding, is a huge part of the application and the solution that we're building, and one that we have to pay close attention to make sure that our apps are safe and running to the best of their ability to help protect our consumers of our applications, right? Because if our consumers aren't happy, they're not going to use our application. If they're not using our application, right, then we're not making any money. So we want to make sure that we're protecting everybody. So keep an eye out there for it. Think about what are the different notification rules, what are the different sensitive information rules that exist out there. Again, I'll put a couple links of these out there on the show notes. But go out and do some searches. Start to find out a little bit more about it. You can reach me at DevelopSec on Twitter, or you can reach out to me at james@jardinesoftware.com with any comments, feedback. I've already gotten lots of great positive feedback, and keep it coming. I enjoy doing the show, and I enjoy coming up with different topics to talk about that I hope will be helpful to developers, business analysts, QA, that side of the house. Not necessarily going after the security side. This is more going toward, hey, we're the ones building solutions. Let's talk about what we can do to build this up. If you haven't seen already, I have gone live with the DevelopSec.com website. And on there, I'm doing a section where we do takeaways, where I'm actually taking some of the breaches that we've seen happen, some articles that are coming out of things going on in the news, and we break it down a little bit and look and see what we have for takeaways. What are the lessons learned that we've seen from this? The application got popped in this manner. Well, what are the takeaways? What are the takeaways for devs? What are the takeaways for QA? Right? If they're out there, I want to grab them. I want to put them out there. I want to make it very clear, hey, these guys did this. And whether it was blatant, whether it was idiotic, whether it was just an accident, this is what they did. Here's why it was bad. And here's why it caused what it did. And here's what you can do to make sure that, hey, are we doing this? Let's not do this. Let's make sure that we're not doing the same thing that guy did who just got popped. during one of his assessments, or he just got breached. So let's protect ourselves. Follow the website, check it out. Some interesting stuff, I think, on there. But please let me know. Send me your feedback. And I'll talk to you on the next episode. Thank you. You have been listening to the DevelopSec podcast with James Jardine. Follow us on Twitter at DevelopSec and visit our website at www.developsec.com for more episodes and information.